verses 1 to 15. So John chapter 6, verses 1 to 15. It should be on the board for you behind, so you can follow along as well. After this, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias. And a large crowd was following him, because they saw the signs he was doing on the sick. Jesus went up the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. Now the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand. Lifting up his eyes then, and seeing that a large crowd was coming towards him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "There is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they for so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." Now, there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, about 5,000 in number. Jesus then took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. And then, when they had eaten, their fill, he told his disciples, "Gather up the leftover fragments, that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up and filled 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they said, "This is indeed the prophet who has come into the world." Perceiving that they were about to come and take him by force and make him king, Jesus withdrew again to the mountain by himself. So we're going to think a little bit. There you go, fantastic. Off you go. What's my point, everybody? That I could do a little magic trick. I could kind of trick somebody into thinking that I could do this. But the truth is that when Jesus did it, he didn't have any trickery. He didn't have any long sleeves where he was slipping bread and fish out of his sleeves. In fact, that bread there wouldn't be enough to fill all of you here. And yet when Jesus spoke, there was at least 25 times the amount of people that are here. Okay? Probably 50 times the amount if we include what we think women and children there might have been as well. We're talking like an amazing miracle that's happened. We're talking about a huge amount of bread and fish that fed everybody. So let me ask that question again. What is it all about? As you read that passage, by the way, it's recorded in all 4 Gospels, so we can compare them and get that big picture of the event. But as you read that passage, I'd love for you to go home today, read it, children, read it with your adults, and ask the question, what is it all about? What do we learn from this passage? I want to give you 3 quick things to think about, and then a 4th question at the end. The first one is this. You ready, Sam? Thanks, mate. And the next, that's it. Fantastic. I want us to think, first of all, that Jesus welcomes me. Can you say that as well? Jesus welcomes me. Fantastic. You see, we read in the other Gospels, particularly in Matthew as well, that Jesus was actually really tired at this point. That he'd been doing lots of different big people events, yeah? He was healing people, he was teaching, and he was tired. Jesus is fully God, but he's also confined to a man at this point. And so he gets tired, like me and you. Now, I don't know about you. I'm a bit of an extrovert, I think, so I love being around people, and I get my energy from being around people. But there does come a point when I think, can you just go away? Yeah? Is that polite to say? It's not really, is it? Okay, I'd never say it out loud. But I do get to that point where I'm tired and I just want to pull myself away to a quiet place for a little while. Is it the same with you guys? Do you ever feel like I just need a bit of alone time, a bit of space? Jesus was feeling the same. Now, if it was me and I saw a big crowd coming to me, I'd probably say, oh, they just won't leave me alone. Here they go again. But what do we read in Matthew? We read this, Matthew chapter 14, verse 14. When Jesus landed, that's on the side of the Sea of Galilee that we heard about in John there, he saw a large crowd and he didn't grumble, he didn't moan, but it said he had compassion on them and he healed their sick. I would love for you today to leave this place with the knowledge that Jesus welcomes you. That even if others are saying, I just need space, even if you're feeling like, am I the only person? Like, am I all alone here? I feel so isolated. Jesus welcomes you. Even if you're part of a big group of people and you have lots of popularity and lots of friendships, Jesus welcomes you. Jesus said that everyone who knocks on the door, he will answer to. Everybody who seeks will find. And that's true from the youngest of us to the oldest. Jesus will welcome you this morning if you come to him. He'll never turn you away. Can I ask? The first question is, do you know that Jesus has welcomed you? Do you know him in your life? So first of all, Jesus welcomes me. Can you say that again for me?
Jesus welcomes me.
Fantastic. Number 2, please, Sam. Secondly, I want us to see that I can know Jesus. Can you say that as well? I can know Jesus. Let's have a look at the verse that goes with this. We're going back to John that we've just read. Oh, it's just disappeared. That's okay, mate. Don't worry. Do you want me to pull it up here? Good stuff. John chapter 6, verses 5 and 6. You say this. When Jesus looked up and saw the great crowd coming towards him, he said to Philip, where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? Now, this is an interesting idea, isn't it? Like, Jesus asks Philip a question. He says, where are we going to find enough bread? Philip's response, later on, with Andrew as well, is they look, and first of all, Philip says 200 days worth of wages wouldn't be enough to even give everybody a little bit. And then Andrew, he goes on to say, I found 5 loaves and 2 fish, but what's the point? It's not going to feed anybody. The idea for both of them is they look at the problem and they say, it's way too big. Like, there's no way we're going to be able to do this. And yet Jesus already knows the answer. Can you see that in verse 6 there? He said he asked this only to test them, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. So why did Jesus do that? Parents, have you ever had the experience where you get to like a muddy puddle or something like that and it's big, and you turn to your child and say, how are we going to get across here? Yeah? Now, I'm pretty sure in that moment, you're not asking your 3-year-old child how we're going to get across because you're stumped, okay? I think you want to give them a little problem to solve. You want them to learn something as you ask that question. The only problem is, when they're 3, the answer is plow right through it and make as much mess as possible, okay? In the same way here, I think Jesus is turning to Philip and he's saying, how are we going to feed these people, Philip? What do you think I can do? Jesus already knows how he's going to answer. Jesus knows exactly what he's going to do, but he wants Philip to get to know him. He wants Philip to learn about Jesus. Many years ago, I was a teacher for about 4 years, so it's about 20 minutes in the life of a normal teacher, okay? But I remember I went to the dentist. Now, the dentist was on the same street that my nan and granddad lived on, and that's where I grew up as well for a few years. So my dentist was in the heart of the community where I taught. And kids, I'll let you into a little secret, okay? Even though your teacher says it, it's like a worldwide teacher joke. They don't live in the cupboard in school, okay? They don't sleep there of a night. I'm sorry if I've spoiled it, okay? But they've got a life, yeah? And me, with my class at the time while I was teaching, I was keen to tell them about me, but I didn't want them to know everything about me, yeah? I didn't want them to know necessarily where I lived, for example. Otherwise, I'd have little hands knocking on my door all the time, yeah? So this day, I went to the dentist, and as I was coming down the street from Nan and Grandad's, I turned towards the dentist, and I spotted one of the girls from my class who lived on the end of the road. She saw me like this, because Mr. Keiley was outside the school, okay? She couldn't believe it. And she watched me like this in silence walk into the dentist. Now, I had a filling, which is nothing new for me, okay? But this time I decided I'd have a filling without the anaesthetic, because I was being a grump, okay? So I came out of the dentist feeling like I'd gone 10 rounds with a boxer, with a face that was all swollen up. And as I opened the front door of the dentist to come out, 6 other kids from my class were sitting on the step. Yeah? And Sophie turned to them and went, "I told you it was Mr. Keiley." And I had to walk back to my nan and granddad's, feeling like I'd had a boxing match, okay? Probably with like a bit of like slobber down the side of my face or something, with a string of kids walking behind me, going, "Mr. Keiley, I can't believe it's you," okay? Now, in that moment, I didn't necessarily want those kids to get to know me, yeah? I don't want them to know everything. But you know Jesus, he wants you to get to know him. He won't be standoffish with you. He won't hold back from you. He won't say, "You can know this about me, but I'm going to keep, like, you know, where I live, for example, I'm going to keep that to myself." Because he says to us that if we trust in him, we can go to be with him forever. We can go and live with Jesus. He doesn't close the door to us. Jesus wants us to get to know him. So first of all, we can come to Jesus. He'll always welcome us. Secondly, I can know Jesus. Can you say that once more for me, everybody? I can know Jesus. Are you still awake? Is that okay? I can know Jesus. And the third very simple thing I want to tell you today is this. Jesus is God. When I say it's simple, it's 3 words, but it's the most profound truth that you'll ever learn. That Jesus is God. Let's see the verse for this, please, Sam. John chapter 6, verse 11. Then Jesus took the loaves, he gave thanks to his Father in heaven for them, and he started to distribute them to all those who were seated. Can you see that last part there? He gave them as much as they wanted. And he did the same with the fish. Jesus did something impossible. I can't do that. I needed the help of Becky. And even then, it was a bit ropey at best, wasn't it? But Jesus can take 5 loaves and 2 fish, and he can feed as many people as he wants. And he can get them to a point where they're so full that when they collect in the leftovers, somehow there's 12 baskets full. Jesus is not just a prophet. He's not a magician. He's not some kind of fraudster or trickster. Jesus is God. Only God could do this. And Jesus did it. And as he did it, he proved to all the people around that he was different. But not everybody saw that truth properly. We'll think about that in a second. You see, this morning, everybody, I want you to know that Jesus is the God who can do the impossible. You see, Jesus could take those 5 small loaves and multiply them in a way that we have no idea how. Like, I'm asking questions like, if he ripped it, did another bit grow back straight away? Like, I want to know, what did it look like when that... I think it was just a miracle that no one would be able to fathom. But Jesus was probably smiling to himself, saying, I hope they get it. I hope they understand what I'm trying to show them. See, Jesus could do the impossible. But that wasn't just 2,000 years ago, everybody. Jesus can do the impossible in my life and your life as well. You see, there is a great divide between us and God. The Bible says that because of our sin, because we've turned to God and said, God, I'm not interested in following you. Because we were born into that state, born as sinners, that there is a great divide and we can't approach God. The Bible says that God is clothed in inapproachable light. Adults, this might be a concept that you might like to dwell on because it's a deep one. That God is so pure, is so perfect, is so spotless and right in everything he does, that if I was to approach God in my sinful state, I would instantly die. I would be no more. I would be vaporized, if you want, because of his purity. Many people in the Old Testament said that. Woe to me, I'm a dead man, for I've seen God, as they realize their sinful state and see his purity. There is a great divide between us and God, everybody. But the amazing thing is that impossible divide to bridge has been bridged. Jesus has made a way for us to approach God. And not to approach as a standoffish enemy, like, Lord, I hope I'm going to be okay now. No. When Jesus died upon that cross, he took our sin upon himself and he paid it in full. We deserve that death. The Bible says the wages of sin is death. We deserve to be separated from God, and yet Jesus took it. And as he took that punishment upon that cross, the price was paid in full, so that if we turn to Jesus and say, Jesus, forgive me, a sinner, then I don't have to approach in fear and uncertainty about what might happen. But the Bible says I can boldly approach his throne as a child of God, forgiven, made right before him, welcomed in, being called a brother of Jesus Christ himself. How amazing is that? That I can know that relationship, and so can you. Why? Because Jesus welcomes you today to come and trust in him. Because Jesus wants you to get to know him, not as a figure from history, nor as somebody from a book, but personally, as your rescuer, as your king, kids, as your friend. And thirdly, because Jesus is God. The final verse sticks out to me, verse 15. I think we've got it here, haven't we? John chapter 6, verse 15. Look at this. It says, Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. The people saw what Jesus did. They saw this amazing miracle, and they were like, let's make this guy our king. Yeah, and we'll parade him through the streets, and we'll worship him. And on the face of it, that seems so good. You're like, why did Jesus want to withdraw from that? Because Jesus isn't after earthly kingdom. Jesus is the king over every king. He's the everlasting God. He's the wonderful counselor. He's the Prince of Peace. Jesus is king over every king. An earthly throne isn't good enough for Jesus. The heavenly one is. Can I ask you today, do you know Jesus as your king? We've got a service next week. It's a really, really exciting service. It's going to be at 6:30 on Sunday night. So kids, you could ask parents if you could stay up late, okay? And parents, if you want to come as well, you're more than welcome to come and join us. The children will come down here and we'll kneel down at the front. And we've got 4 people who are going to be baptized. We're going to open the stage here and we're going to fill it full of water. But I don't want you to just see somebody getting wet. I want you to come and I want you to hear stories. Stories of young people, it is this time. 4 young people who are saying, Jesus is my king. And I know him to be my rescuer. Can I invite you along to that? I would love to welcome you all to that service. And there's 2 more things, just if you're interested as well. We have loads of copies of this book, which is just outside, called Explore. And this answers some of the big questions of who Jesus is. If you're a Christian and you want to dive into more of who Jesus is, come and help yourself to one of these. If you're not a Christian and you're just interested, come and take one. Nobody will be taking your name to say you've taken a copy, so we'll chase you up or anything like that. Nothing like that. Feel free to take one. Have a little read and see what you think. The second one is a little bit of a thicker book. They've turned it into a movie if you're not good at reading, but I would encourage you to read this. It's by a man called Lee Strobel. He was a journalist for the Chicago Tribune, and basically he said that I cannot believe that Jesus is God. His wife became a Christian, and so he decided he was going to prove her wrong, which is never a good marriage piece of advice, is it, to prove your wife wrong? But there you go. He said, I'm going to prove her wrong.